The haunting of St. Mary's Hospital. St. Mary's Hospital had stood on the outskirts of town for nearly a century, its once grand facade now a crumbling relic of the past. It had been abandoned for decades, ever since a mysterious fire had ravaged the East Wing, claiming the lives of numerous patients and staff. Locals whispered about strange occurrences and sightings, convinced the hospital was haunted by the spirits of those who had perished in the blaze. Years later, a group of 6 friends, driven by curiosity and a shared love of the supernatural, decided to spend a night exploring the infamous hospital. The leader of the group, Mark, had a fascination with urban legends and was determined to document any paranormal activity they might encounter. Armed with flashlights, cameras, and a Ouija board, they ventured into the decaying structure one cold, moonless night. As they approached the hospital, the wind howled through the broken windows, creating an eerie symphony of moans and whispers. The main entrance doors, hanging precariously on their hinges, creaked loudly as the group pushed them open and stepped inside. The air inside was stale, thick with the scent of mold and decay. Dust particles floated in the beam of their flashlights, giving the dark corridors an ethereal glow. The walls were adorned with peeling paint, and the floor was littered with debris from years of neglect. As they ventured further, the temperature seemed to drop, and an uneasy feeling settled over them. "All right, guys, let's split up and cover more ground," Mark suggested, his voice barely masking his excitement. "We'll meet back here in an hour." The group hesitated but eventually agreed. Mark and his girlfriend, Lisa, headed towards the East Wing, where the fire had done the most damage. Tom and Rachel took the West Wing, while Kevin and Sarah went to explore the basement. Mark and Lisa walked through the charred remains of the East Wing, the walls blackened and crumbling. The floor was unstable, and they had to tread carefully to avoid falling through. They paused at what appeared to be an old nurse's station, where Mark set up his camera and began filming. "Do you feel that?" Lisa whispered, rubbing her arms. "It's freezing in here." "Yeah, it's strange," Mark replied, glancing around. "Let's try the Ouija board." They sat on the floor, placing the board between them. Mark lit a few candles, adding a flickering light to the oppressive darkness. They placed their fingers on the planchette and began to ask questions. "Is there anyone here with us?" Mark asked, his voice steady. For a few moments, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the planchette began to move. Lisa's eyes widened, and she looked at Mark, who shook his head to indicate he wasn't moving it. "Who are you?" Lisa asked, her voice trembling. The planchette spelled out, "Help." "What happened to you?" Mark asked, feeling a chill run down his spine. "Fire," the board spelled out. "Trapped." Lisa's eyes filled with tears as she felt an overwhelming sense of sorrow and fear. "Can we help you?" she asked softly. The planchette moved to yes, then spelled out, "Find me." Mark and Lisa exchanged a worried glance, but decided to follow the board's instructions. They packed up the Ouija board and continued deeper into the East Wing, guided by a sense of urgency. Meanwhile, Tom and Rachel explored the West Wing, which seemed relatively intact compared to the East. They found old patient rooms, operating theaters, and medical equipment left to rot. As they walked, they heard faint footsteps echoing through the halls. "Did you hear that?" Rachel asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah," Tom replied, gripping her hand. "Let's check it out." They followed the sound to a room at the end of the corridor. The door was slightly ajar, and as they pushed it open, they were hit by a wave of cold air. Inside, the room was dark except for the faint glow of their flashlights. In the center of the room stood a ghostly figure of a nurse, her uniform charred and her face twisted in agony. She raised a bony finger and pointed to a cabinet against the wall. Rachel swallowed hard and approached the cabinet, her hands shaking. She opened it to reveal a collection of old medical files. Among them was a single, untouched file with a name that sent chills down her spine, Emily Hart. "Tom, look at this," she said, her voice trembling. Tom read the name and felt a cold shiver. "We need to show this to Mark," he said. Down in the basement, Kevin and Sarah navigated the labyrinth of corridors, their flashlights barely piercing the darkness. The basement was damp and smelled of rot, the walls slick with moisture. They found an old boiler room and decided to investigate. As they entered, the door slammed shut behind them, and the temperature plummeted. They heard a low growling noise and felt a presence in the room with them. "Kevin, what is that?" Sarah whispered, her voice quivering with fear. "I don't know," Kevin replied, looking around frantically. Suddenly, a figure lunged at them from the shadows. It was the ghost of a patient, his face contorted in rage and pain. Kevin and Sarah screamed and bolted for the door, struggling to open it. They finally managed to escape, slamming the door behind them. "We need to get out of here," Kevin panted, his heart racing. They hurried back to the main entrance, where they found Mark, Lisa, Tom, and Rachel waiting, their faces pale with fear. "Did you guys find anything?" Mark asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Rachel held up the file. "We found this. Emily Hart. The nurse's ghost led us to it." "We had a similar experience," Mark said, recounting their encounter with the Ouija board. "We need to find her." Together, the group retraced their steps to the east wing, where the fire had trapped Emily and the patients. Guided by the spirit's lingering presence, they found a hidden room behind a collapsed wall. Inside, they discovered a makeshift infirmary, where Emily had tried to save the patients during the fire. The room was filled with medical supplies and makeshift beds, but it was clear that everyone inside had perished. As they explored the room, the temperature dropped even further, and they saw the ghostly figure of Emily appear before them. She looked at them with pleading eyes, her charred form flickering in the candlelight. "We found you, Emily," Lisa said softly. "What can we do to help you find peace?" Emily pointed to a small, locked box on a shelf. Mark retrieved it and forced it open, revealing a collection of letters and photographs. They were from Emily's family, thanking her for her dedication and expressing their love. "These must have been very important to her," Mark said, looking at the faded letters. Suddenly, the room filled with a warm light, and Emily's ghostly form began to fade. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with gratitude. The group watched in awe as Emily's spirit dissipated, leaving them in the dim light of their flashlights. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and they felt a sense of peace. "Let's get out of here," Mark said, and they all agreed. As they made their way back to the main entrance, they heard one last whisper echo through the halls, "Thank you for freeing me." They exited the hospital, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon. The storm had passed, and the air was crisp and clear. They looked back at St. Mary's Hospital, now just a silent, decaying structure. "Do you think it's over?" Sarah asked, her voice hopeful. "I think so," Mark replied. "Emily's at peace now." The friends left the hospital grounds, feeling a sense of closure. They had faced their fears and helped a lost soul find peace. But as they walked away, they couldn't shake the feeling that the hospital still held many secrets, waiting to be discovered by those brave enough to enter its haunted halls.